Hey, in recent years, headset announcements have been happening left and right. Tiny headsets, big headsets, autonomous headsets, wired headsets, headsets. But there is one headset that would be appealing for another audience. To an audience that is not usually interested in technology and VR announcements. They may not be interested in VR in general. They're used to leaning back on the couch and while holding controller in their hands spend a few hours playing another FIFA or Call of Duty. I'm talking about console players. And now, for this audience, provided that they have a PlayStation 5, there is a VR headset. A proper headset, not the misunderstanding that came out in 2017. The PlayStation VR2 has been my most anticipated VR device for a long time. And it's not just about numbers in specifications. It's not even that PlayStation Studios can fund and release a bunch of interesting games for a new device. I was expecting Sony to make a statement, releasing a second, solid VR headset for consoles that would be a head and shoulders above the first one, and that would kickstart the entire VR industry. Release of such a device would give a signal to others that even if PlayStation continues pushing VR industry, then it's time for Nintendo and Xbox to start thinking about how to bring this new audience to their platforms. The device came out, the signal was sent, the audience in the new shiny white headset was happy and was praising the device. Sony got praised even before the release of the headset. Most of the people who tried it at events praised PSVR2. And what not to praise? Just look at those specifications. 4K OLED, HDR, 120Hz screens, 110-degree field of view, headset vibrations, inside-out tracking, proper controllers and eye tracking. Sounds great. However, when I put my headset on the day of the release, I was first impressed and then immediately upset. The reason for that was the same OLED screens that everyone was praising. Approximately 3 years ago, the last OLED headset, Oculus Quest, came out, after which the market fully shifted to LCD headsets. Quest 2, Valve Index, Vive Pro 2, Pimax, HP Reverb G2, Vario Aero, all these devices preferred LCD screens, and there are several reasons for that. First, in LCD screens, the pixels can be placed closer together, reducing the effect of screen door. Secondly, compared to OLED, these screens work faster and create fewer trails behind the object. And thirdly, they're more durable and do not burn in if you forget turned on headset on the chair and for some reason its screens didn't switch off. But there are obvious drawbacks. LCDs sacrifice brightness, black colors and contrast. Putting on PSVR2, I remember the feeling when the eyes squint for a second from the brightness of the sun in the game. YouTuber Brad Lynch made some measurements. While Valve Index and Quest Pro have maximum brightness at 180 and 100 nits respectively, measured value in PSVR2 reached 265 nits. I was equally pleased with the dark scenes. While being thrown to the basement in the game Resident Evil Village, I fully felt something that can only be described as pitch black. But I also noticed the issues of the OLED screens. The screen resolution and pixel density do not reach the Quest 2 level, and it's noticeable. Plus, uniform colors show the main enemy of OLEDs, pixel inconsistency or Mura. Looking at the monochromatic gray sky, you can see that each pixel is slightly different shade from the next one. And because of this, the effect of an old film is created. Plus, the effect is very noticeable in dark, but not fully dark scenes. I saw comparisons of other bloggers. Some see it more, some less, but keep in mind that you will get it to some extent. This is a known problem of all OLED panels. Second visual disadvantage is created by the combination of bright screens and outdated optics. PSVR2 still relies on Fresnel lenses that create godrays in high contrast scenes. If you ever tried a VR headset, you're probably familiar with them. Sony promises 110 degrees of viewing angle in their headset, and I must say that they keep their promise, if you move the screens as close as possible to your eyes. But there is one issue. Personally, in my case, when the lenses are as close as possible, their edges begin to rub on the sides of my nose. In order to avoid that, I have to move them away a little bit, which reduces the viewing angle. Apparently the headset was made for smaller than mine noses. If you have glasses, then you will move the screens anyway, so it won't apply for you. It's worth mentioning eye tracking separately. Its main function is the use of foveated rendering in games. For the user, everything looks business as usual, but if you watch the recording of the game, you can see exactly where the user is looking at the moment. Such area is drawn in maximum resolution, and everything else gets a bit blurry and out of focus. This helps devs to save PS5 resources and allows them to push graphics a little bit further. In addition to the visual component, eye tracking can be accessed directly by developers. In Firewall 0 Hour, you can choose weapon attachments and throw grenades while aiming with your eyes. In some horror games, you will be jump scared the moment you blink. And there are entire games built on the idea of blinking. One can only guess what other creative uses for eye tracking developers can come up with. From the visuals, let's move on the audio. New headset from Sony has 3D sound technology, which is supposed to be enjoyed through your own headphones or through the bundled earplugs, conveniently attached at the back of the headband. No built-in speakers or headphones, which in my opinion is a big oversight. Bundled earbuds are okay, but I prefer to use the big headphones over the rim. I use official PlayStation 5 headphones called Pulse 3D. They will cost you an additional $100. Sometimes when I need to hear surroundings and the game at the same time, for example when my cats are happily destroying my apartment, I leave the headphones on the headband so that they won't touch my head, creating a sort of non-contact Valve Index-like solution. As I said at the very beginning, the PSVR2 headset not only can display fancy picture and play sounds, but it can also vibrate. The vibrating part is in the front and it's located right on your forehead. At the times when a giant dinosaur steps over you shaking the ground, you pass under the waterfall, or you fire a shotgun while holding it very close to your face, the headset starts to vibrate a little. The level of vibration does not make you feel uncomfortable. It is not enough to disorient you or to give a concussion. To be honest, even the vibration of my phone feels much more stronger, but this effect is enough to add to immersion. I just hope the developers don't overdo this and make the top of your head vibrate every 5 seconds. If you want to use the headset as a head massager, I recommend starting the game Song in the Smoke and getting under the waterfall. Before we move on to tracking, let's take a look at the headset from all angles and see what the different buttons do. There are 4 cameras on the front responsible for both tracking and the ability to look around without taking it off. On the top left there is a wheel for adjusting the interpupillary distance. On the top right there is a button for moving the screens away from the face. Before removing the headset, I usually move the screens out. The movement is already automatic. In the middle of the bottom, in a small cavity, is a power button. You won't accidentally press it. When turned on, the headset vibrates a little, so you always know when a headset is turned on. On the left is a microphone and on the right is a customizable button. Initially it's set to be able to look around in the room. If you have a suspicion that someone broke into your apartment, simply press the button to quickly look around. The image from the cameras is quite good quality, better than Quest 2. But still black and white. In the headset settings you can change the functionality of the button to mute the microphone. Convenient for online games when you need to ask for some water from your parents during a 4-hour gaming session. The wire from the headset to PS5 is thinner than the Valve Index's one. It plugs into the USB-C port on the front of your PS5. The wire is non-removable on the headset side without disassembling it. And if you do disassemble the headset, you will void the warranty on the device. That's the freedom that Sony offers to you. On the headset side, wire is positioned in a way that you can either put it on your back or run it in front of your chest. The official PlayStation guides recommend you to play while looking towards the TV, and therefore the wire is usually shown in the front. I don't quite agree with this decision, as an active VR game in front of the TV can end badly for the TV. On the back of the headband there is a ratchet with a button in the middle. By holding the button you can open up the headband, put it on your head and then tighten it stronger. At the bottom is a 3.5mm headphone jack where you connect the included earplugs. Finally, on the sides of the rim there are a couple of holes for fastening included earbuds. I won't say it's super necessary to do, the wire on the included plugs is short and I usually just leave them hanging on the sides. What about lenses? The lenses show traditional Fresnel circles. Around the lenses on the edge you can see the LEDs for eye tracking. A light rubber pad will protect you from the light from all sides, including from down around the nose. I can say there is almost zero light leakage. Tracking is one of the weaknesses of the headset, and even Sony knows about it. Don't get me wrong, in general, the tracking of the headset and controllers works fine, but there are some annoying bugs. Sometimes my floor level turns out to be higher than it's supposed to be, other times my hand drifts away somewhere, throwing me into the air. I'm not saying that problem happens all the time, but a couple of times in a 2-hour session you have to put up with it for sure. Plus, shooting with a hand close to the face is still questionable. In some situations the tracking of the right hand starts to get downright unpleasantly glitchy when aiming from a rifle, but sometimes everything is fine. But overall, I expect Sony to address those issues, as this is their first try into VR without external cameras, so it's no wonder the tracking isn't perfect. It's still dozens of times better than the DPVR E4, a headset I was testing not too long ago. Sony understands that they need to improve. For really difficult cases there is a switch in the headset settings to help with tracking. The image on the TV gets a small frame with PlayStation symbols, and the device cameras use this frame for more accurate tracking. Again, this will work provided that you play towards the TV and you are not afraid for its safety. It helps a lot with tracking if your walls have some sort of contrast colors, like wallpapers, paintings or shelf with a bunch of decorations. It will be easier for the headset to find key points for tracking. Since I've talked about controllers, let's take a closer look at them. DualSense controllers are clearly the bastard child of the original Oculus Touch and DualSense PS5 controllers. The controllers have large tracking rings that look comically huge at first, but when you're using them it becomes clear what designers at Sony are getting paid for. The parts of the controllers that will be brought close to each other, the front and the side, do not collide with each other. For any motion, if you bring your hands together, your thumbs and forefingers would touch each other before the controllers hit each other. The same applies for archery or shooting. Hand can get very close to the headset, and I have never accidentally hit my headset with a controller's ring. But not everything is perfect with these controllers. For my large hands the buttons are too close. With a comfortable grip, it's not comfortable for me to press the trigger, and I can barely reach the joystick, not to mention the bottom buttons. So I have to play with a slightly relaxed grip, not holding the controller tightly in my hand, but just holding it with my fingers. I hope your hands will be more up to the standards of Sony. The buttons were taken straight from the regular PS5 controller, but with some changes. If on a traditional PlayStation controller I remember that the triangle is the top button, here I have to think on which hand it's located. The sticks are smaller, but have the same feel as the PS5 controller. The bumpers are gone as the directional buttons. Instead, there is a grip button. The grip under the middle finger is not a pedal like on Quest 2, but a button. But it's very soft and has a touch sensor, so I never noticed during the game that they're different. If you want to play flat screen games on PSVR2, you will still use a traditional controller, so different buttons on the controllers are not a problem. Controllers charge through USB-C, but there is only one charging cable included in the box. Apparently you are supposed to take turns charging controllers or use a charger from the original controller. Controllers have straps that are made in an unusual way. They can be tightened with one hand by simply twisting the arm. It's very convenient, but sometimes I overdo it and tighten it so that the blood stops flowing into my hand. Just be careful. For controllers, Sony has a first-party accessory, a docking station for $50. Small adapters come with the docking station, plug them into the ports of the controllers, connect the docking station to the outlet, and the controllers start charging, beautifully forming an infinity sign. I saw that there are some third-party docking stations, but I haven't tried them. The main feature of the controllers is adaptive triggers. Triggers that create additional resistance to your finger. Developers are already using them to the fullest, not only to simulate pulling the trigger of the weapon, but also for pulling a bowstring, climbing, lifting objects and many other actions. Of course, firearms have the most variability. In the demo of Star Wars Tales from the Galaxy's Edge, you can try a bunch of different weapons, and combined with a variety of vibrations, the trigger actually feels different between different types of weapons. It's difficult to express it with words, but all of this really adds to the immersion. It's time to talk about PSVR2 games. On launch, we received about 30 different projects, most of which either already came out on other platforms or were already available on the first version of PSVR, and now they have received an improvement. Out of all games, the real exclusives are only Gran Turismo 7 for racing fans, Resident Evil 8 Village, and Horizon Call of the Mountain. With Gran Turismo, it's clear. It's a racing game where you either play using traditional controller or by a steering wheel. Other games should show the full potential of the headset. And they do it with a bang. Horizon's gorgeous scenery showcase bright and colorful screens. Resident Evil's dark basements allow you to unlock the potential of true black pixels in the headset. Adaptive triggers are used in both games. Eye tracking is used for foveated rendering. And the vibration of the headband makes you feel every step of the dinosaur walking towards you. Most of those features are also used in third-party projects. VR Kayak has very beautiful environments and a sun that blinds you. No Man's Sky has endless dark space and colorful planets, the landscapes of which you can enjoy for hours. Headset shows the image in good resolution, the jagged edges are hardly noticeable, and in general there is a sense of beauty. Not the level of Half-Life Alyx on Pico 4 or Quest 2, but quite close. But in order to achieve this beautiful picture in the headset, Sony made compromises. The biggest one is that almost all games run at 60 frames per second, and the system then artificially adds another 60 frames between them, making the game appear to be running smoothly at 120 FPS. If you're not new to VR, then you are familiar with reprojections. Each manufacturer has its own system. For some it works worse, for some it works better. The higher the resolution, the more resources are required to calculate artificial frames. For users, the standard was originally set as 90 frames per second, which is the value at which most people don't feel nauseated after long sessions in VR. More is better, but less is risky. That's why Sony aims at 120 FPS, so that everyone is comfortable in the headset. Why is it bad then? After all, 120 is better than 90. And even though half of the frames are artificial, what's the difference? The difference is that the system predicts the position of objects in space and doesn't do it perfectly. Far from perfect. Any object moving relative to the player in the game, be it a person, a car or a giant dinosaur, gets a small blur effect around it. As soon as it stops, the effect disappears. The same will happen if you move from the side to side. Static objects are blurred and sometimes doubled. The easiest way to notice this is to physically spin around while holding your hands in front of you. Hands will double in most of the games. This is not visible in the recording, since the output to the screen is at 60 frames per second, before the injection of artificial frames. But I can show a simulation of this effect. And the further away the object is from you, the less it looks like ghosting, and the more it looks like fuzzy edges. The only game I haven't noticed the effect is in Song in the Smoke, precisely because it runs at 90 FPS. For some players this effect won't be noticeable, but I personally see it every time I stop and look at something. The blur effect makes my eyes strain more, and after an hour and a half I start getting headaches from this headset. I'm familiar with reprojections and the mechanism behind it firsthand. For a long time in the headset of the company Vario where I work, there were no reprojections at all, and only recently support was added in early access. But I also know that it's a solvable problem. Yes, requiring hard work and effort, but still solvable. And given that Sony has a little bit more developers than us, I hope that the device would not have such problems at launch. I have seen various recommendations for hiding this effect. For example, that reducing the brightness of the headset to the minimum reduces the amount of blur in the picture. And if at first I was skeptical about such advice, later, thanks to the fellow YouTuber Sadly's Bradley, I realized that the source of the problem was elsewhere. Partially. Bradley filmed PSVR2 screens with a high-speed camera at different brightness values, and at maximum brightness the frame changes twice as slow. The longer the frame is shown before the eyes, the more blurred it looks. So advice turned out to be not unreasonable. At low brightness the blur is less. Is it worth compromising the brightness of the device, which is one of the main features of the given device? I think not. Theoretically, Sony can improve the situation with headset firmware, if the frame speed can be fixed, otherwise the blur will not go anywhere. And for Sony's image doubling issue, the reprojection algorithms need to be improved, but I have an assumption that they can go different way to solve this problem, by releasing a new console, PS5 Pro. Many sources have already predicted the release of the Pro version of the console for this year, and if its power is at least 30% higher, this will be enough for all current projects to work at 90 FPS and no longer require reprojections. But this is baseless speculation. The second weak point of the headset, of course, is the weak starting lineup of the games. Very few projects have been announced from the company's internal studios. In addition to the already released games, we're waiting only for Crossfire Shooter Sierra Squad and Firewall Ultra as platform exclusives. All other projects either have been already released on Quest 2 and PC, or soon will be released there. It's sad that the studios that previously made big VR titles, like PlayStation London Studios with Blood and Truth and PlayStation VR Worlds, and Insomniac with Stormland, don't do VR anymore. But besides them, Naughty Dog with Uncharted, Sony Santa Monica with God of War, Media Molecule with Dreams, Guerrilla Games and others didn't announce a single game. How can players believe in longevity of the platform if Sony gives no reason to believe in it? The platform will receive support from third-party developers for sure, as now there is one more platform with a much larger audience in addition to the Meta Store, where you can earn money from VR projects. And yes, the graphics on PS5 is so much prettier than on a standalone headset. Surely many are thinking, what if you connect the headset to a PC and use it for PC games? PC has more power and more games on Steam, and good headsets are rare. Unfortunately, at this moment, the headset doesn't work with a PC neither as a monitor nor as anything else. The developer of the driver Ivory for the first PSVR has already begun to debug the headset, but I wouldn't put my hopes high. It could be years before the headset would work properly with PC. How is it in comparison with competition? In terms of clean static picture, brightness and colors, and by the way, PSVR2 is the first headset with 10-bit color reproduction, while all competitors use only 8-bit. Sony certainly takes the crown of leadership. And if you have a PS5 and you are not a PC user, you will be choosing between Quest 2 and PSVR2. I don't mention Pico 4 because of the weak library, despite the fact that the headset itself is quite good. And content is usually what people choose in the devices. If PSVR2 had Half-Life Alyx, sales of the device would be much higher. When choosing between standalone Quest 2 and PSVR2, I choose PSVR2 because of the better picture, brightness and convenience, even despite the slightly higher screen resolution and wirelessness of the Quest 2. I will prefer PSVR2 if Sony fixes the problem with the screens. If Sony fixes ghosting and blurring. I want to play Sony exclusives. I want to be scared in the dark. I want to squint to the sun. I want to feel my fingers squeezing the blaster trigger and the water dripping on my head. But for now, I'm limited to short gaming sessions, between which I have to take breaks, just like 5 years ago after buying my first headset. As for current PC users, I don't think you should bother buying a console and a headset. For me, the whole kit came out to 550 euros for the console and 700 euros for a headset bundle, with the game Horizon Call of the Mountain. For the same price, you can significantly upgrade your computer and get good picture in your current headset, or buy Pico 4 to improve the visuals, or buy a body tracker system for VR chat. Plus, don't forget about the price of the games in Sony's store. In the European region, Gran Turismo 7 costs 80 euros for the basic version, and Horizon Call of the Mountain costs 70 euros. Not the cheapest entertainment. But I see people playing games, streaming, discussing PSVR2 like there is no problems. And people love Sony's new headset. and for many this is their first headset. It may well be that I'm just sensitive to these issues, and most people won't notice them. And I will continue to use this headset in short sessions. And I will continue to wait for updates, improvements and more games. Give me an Uncharted game already. Even PS Vita has it. Thanks for watching, thumbs up if you liked this review, thumbs down if you didn't. Subscribe to this channel, I will have more reviews of other headsets and VR related devices. Let me know your opinion about PSVR2 in the comments, and we will see you in virtual reality.